Club of Lebanon, for those of you who don't know me. Thank you, Eddy, for having come all the way here. And thank you to the BDB team for hosting us today. We have online guests too who are following us. Let me tell you a little bit about the agenda for today. After this introductory note, Eddy's introduction will probably focus on the ups and downs of Anghami. We'll have plenty of time for Q&A. And I suggest in about an hour and 15 minutes, maybe, we'll go discover the only rooftop in Beirut that you probably don't know, the BDB rooftop. So, Eddy, as I was reading about you, I was fascinated by all the entrepreneurial skills that you had. And the more I read, the more I realized that you are a true Lebanese entrepreneur. I found like 4 key ingredients. The first one, passion. In your case, passion for music. You had a law degree, but passion was elsewhere. That passion brought you in 2010, maybe, to a conference in Barcelona about mobile technologies, where one of the themes was about piracy in the musical world. And you had the flair, after the passion, the flair. The flair was to realize that, hey, why do we have so much piracy in the Middle East? Maybe it's not because consumers really want to save some bucks. It's maybe because there is no legal alternative, and hence the flair to come up with that legal alternative. The flair again to team up with the right partner, Eddy Habib, whom you had met a few years earlier, and who brought all the technological support for such an implementation. And I was told maybe ski trip, maybe you decided both of you to invest $50,000 each, maybe, or $100,000 each on that venture. I've been to many ski trips, and unfortunately, it didn't turn out the same way. There again, so passion and flair. And the third one is persistence. So you went to the largest label record company in the Middle East, Rotana, and you tried to convince them to give you exclusive rights for musical streaming. And you were able to do this because Eddy was able to convince them that this would not cannibalize their sales. And here you are, having convinced them to launch this platform just based on a PowerPoint presentation. No funds, no technology available yet, and a commitment with a bright idea. And that's the 4th ingredient, which is risk-taking. And you did it so well. The $50,000 or $100,000 were definitely not enough. And you kept looking for investors. You kept looking and looking. And many of your friends declined. Probably told you, that this was a very bad idea, where you would lose whatever you're investing in. And did. Crazy. But here's the MEVP. MEVP was the first investor large investor in Anghami, with an investment of about $1.2 million, when I was right, which enabled you to keep walking the walk. And here we are, a few months later, end of 2011, launching that musical platform. So you had passion, flair, the persistence, the risk-taking portion, and all of this brought you recognition. Company kept growing. 2018, first Harvard Business School case about Anghami. One of the only cases, by the way, about the Lebanese company. There are only 6 available. 2021, first Arab company listed at the NASDAQ. 2022, everyone remembers your picture with Habib ringing that famous bell, 2023, and probably several times before entrepreneurial recognition. In 2023, an award from Endeavor. And in fact, all along the way, because of your persistence, you've been able to benefit from support from various entities, from Endeavor, from Veritech, obviously from the investors. And you ended up also teaming up with MBC, the big marketing push from them, and various investors who followed afterwards. So that was my short summary. And I'll leave it up to you to. You said that. Well, let's go for the track. I'll leave it up to you with your. All right. Thank you very much. Please, a round of applause.
First of all, thank you for your time. Thanks for having me, Hadi. I'm really sorry for how much it was difficult to make it. I'm a bit honestly nervous because you're a very smart audience. Someone told me that you should go like 10 Harvard graduates started the business. So that's not the case. I'm gonna tell you a little bit about about me, and I don't like to talk a lot about me. I don't like to lecture and speak a lot, but given the brief, I prepared a few things, a few words, and how really maybe what I lived through here in Lebanon as Lebanese, how this, also circumstances we went through shaped us to be who we are as people, as Lebanese. Because after we go out of Lebanon, we realize that really this country gave us a lot. And when we're here, we take things for granted. We have something special, that's for sure, as Lebanese. And we don't like to say this outside of Lebanon because that's not probably appropriate, but here we allow ourselves to say things that we really have something special as Lebanese. And I'm proud to be Lebanese. I'm happy to be here having this, gathering in Beirut. So my name is Eddy Maroun. I'm the co-founder of Anghami. It's, again, Anghami, as for its name, is a project that started to fix a problem and to provide an alternative for piracy. We didn't have any music service that gives us music in a proper way. But how we got to Anghami, that's really what I try to reflect on and try to say today. So when I was a kid, I was obsessed with playing piano and keyboard, and with very modest music skills. I wanted to improve my life. I was born in a very normal family. My dad even went bankrupt, and I had to, sustain myself. And I went to work in a musical instrument shop where I was I do demos on keyboards and to sell keyboards. And the plan was, not to be a salesperson for keyboards. My plan was to really rehearse and be able to borrow a keyboard and go play in clubs where I can earn more money and have fun. I wanted to have fun. I always like to have fun. So, and that was my plan. So, and it worked actually. I went there. I used to make $200 a month. And at some point I rehearsed and I trained, and I've been able to have access to a very expensive keyboard I couldn't afford at the time. It was something that you need to go and perform. And when I needed this keyboard, I've been able to convince the shop owner to borrow this keyboard. And I started to make much more money, have fun, and play in clubs, and I quit the previous job. So when I reflect on these things that I used to do when I was a kid, I think that was somehow use of talent, passion, combined with a bit of strategy, a little bit of business mind. And I took risks because I wasn't sure that's gonna work, right? And I might have wasted my time. So today I call this honestly creativity, because all of these are at the end can be somehow summarized in the word creativity. And what I mean by creativity, it's a word I love a lot. What I mean by creativity is not, the creativity in the sense of art. Creativity in how you deal with things, how you fix problems, or how you can find solutions, how you even build relationships, how you can develop from something another with creativity. And this is really, if you combine also this character we have, this something we have as Lebanese, as we're persistent and we're somehow entrepreneurs. You combine entrepreneurship with creativity, and you get to something that what we are today. So I really love this creativity part, and this is something that I teach also to my kids. And by the way, I read a little bit about creativity, and unlike what the myth might be that people are born creative, it's not true. Creativity is something that we can learn. It's a skill that we can acquire, and requires a lot of practice. So it's the most important thing I believe that I've learned throughout my career. And I think also being Lebanese, you need to be creative on sorting things, because we live in a very special, different country. So you need to figure out things creatively. So also speaking of maybe what was probably the seed, of entrepreneurship in me. And by the way, I don't like the word entrepreneurship a lot and entrepreneurs, because I believe it's somehow overused and misleading, especially to young, fresh grads that think that entrepreneurs is the best thing, and I want to be an entrepreneur in school and a hoodie and a backpack. While it's completely not the case, it can really ruin their life, and they end up spending savings of their parents on something that's not very worthwhile, while they can have a beautiful career working at somewhere. So I have my reservation on the word of entrepreneurship. But speaking of that, I had the chance to be at Harvard for a week, part of a program by Endeavor, which is scaling entrepreneurial ventures. And one thing marked me really in this program is the definition of entrepreneurship, which is the pursuit of the opportunity beyond resources controlled. And I remember very well that now I research this definition. It is the pursuit of the opportunity beyond resources controlled. But at the time, I remember very well, it was the relentless pursuit of the opportunity beyond resources controlled at the time. I don't know if the professor added this or I took the note as this, but I really like the relentless part, although probably it goes within the word, pursuit. But, to be entrepreneur, you really need to be relentless. You really need to, not work hard, be obsessed with what you have and never think of quitting, because simply you can't and you don't want to allow yourself to. So it really marked me, and I love this definition. And by the way, the campus was incredible as well. Right? I still wish I can go there. Back to the story of Anghami. So Ellie and I realized at the time that smartphones were something that is gonna it's gonna change our lives. Talking about this in the year 2009 and 10, 2010, where we were all on Blackberries and Nokias. These used to be the smartphones. And we thought that, the way we consume media and content, music and moves, etc., is going to definitely change. That was in 2010, again, when we had Nokias in our hands. And the whole ownership content is going to become access to streaming and technology. So at the time, it wasn't that obvious. Now we look at it and we consume it and we use it in a very mainstream way. But really, at the time, was something that we believed in and turned out to be true. And we said, let's really, do something to have a platform or a way for us to consume, content, namely music, in the region, right? We only had piracy. We didn't have any proper, solution. So we said, let's do it. He started working on the tech, and I started chasing the labels and trying to see if this is something that would be willing to, to license or to engage with. And This is where also we signed our first agreement with the Arab world's largest music label. They were even bigger at the time. They had like maybe 80% market share. It was Rotana at the time, and they were known to be like ruthless sharks. And we convinced them with an agreement that was exclusive at the time, over 3 years, to have exclusive streaming rights. And that was for $600,000. And I remember that I couldn't even afford having a lawyer. I wrote the agreement and I had my friend Tarek like having a look at it just to make sure that in case of default, we don't end up in jail or something. And we didn't have 600,000, we only had the first payment. We scheduled the payments clearly, right? And we only had the first 150, and we paid it, and then we went in our so-called roadshow trying to fundraise with a piece of paper, probably a PowerPoint, no product, in Lebanon, and with speaking about streaming and smartphones and technology where we're carrying Nokia's, right? So it was a bit naive, I have to say. But we're so obsessed and driven by this idea, we thought that's really gonna work until we met here around us MVP. And thankfully, MVP was also a startup at the time, we learned later, and invested in this crazy venture with an investment that was also a co-investment at the time, $1 million, right? And they committed to their part. They started to deploy, and we started to work and started to build and do the so-called business plan. But the other co-investor vanished at the time where they had to wire the money. They completely vanished. Do you remember the story, really? Yeah. So that was like, okay, we realized that this is a real roller coaster. Nothing is gonna be as as smooth or as per the books or proper. Like you have a shareholder agreement, it's signed, one party pays its part, the other didn't happen. They vanished completely. So we had to rework our business plan based on half of the investment, half of the raise needed. And still it worked. And we managed to ship our first product. And thankfully, we had very good traction that Walid and MVP asked for the other tranche, and they doubled their investment, and we continued the journey. So that was the first lesson, that things will not be really easy. Things will not be as planned, and we'll always have to reimagine things and rethink about things, and it's going to be a ride full of surprises and ups and downs. So fast forward today, we are a bunch of more than 150 people, known as the Lebanese success story, if I may say. We moved our headquarters to Abu Dhabi. We have offices in Dubai, in Riyadh, and we still have our largest and coolest office in Beirut that we love a lot. And we somehow transformed or moved from being just a music streaming service to more of an entertainment platform. And the vision behind this is to grow on the back of what we build, and really on the back of the brand we build, to do more and to be able to have more extensions around the business that can support the business, can support the core. In the meantime, drive growth and bigger impact on the whole, industry and the music and creator economy. So we established a joint venture with Sony Music, the world's second largest label, called Vibe Music Arabia. It's a record label to produce up-and-coming talents based out of Dubai. We acquired a live and concerts company called Spotlight. It's also to have a stage, and a place where artists can perform and, have more impact on the industry that makes the most to artists. We launched Anghami Lab, which you asked about, Hadi. It's a stage, it's a lounge, and it's a studio whereby we host also talents and we try to create content. It's a partnership with hospitality leaders, Artmind, the Lebanese guys as well. which are also, Lebanese are the best at hospitality. We're proud of them. We have our first edition in Dubai, and hopefully we're gonna roll in more cities soon. We also launched a production arm called Anghami Studios, whereby we produce content mostly for brands who want to have some sort of music strategy and music content that can live across platforms. And by the way, music like Anghami Studios came out of necessity because during COVID, advertising budgets went down and we had to come up with something new. So we started to propose this to brands that create content for you, and the content goes viral and it worked. And now it's probably growing at 2x year on year. So that's it mostly. I don't know if I forgot something. Yeah, I mean, there's something also that marks our journey that's very simple. On February 3rd, 2011, we signed our first shareholding agreement. And fast forward, February 3rd, 2021 is the date where we rang the bell as, the first Arab tech company to list on Nasdaq. So it's exactly 10 years. So it's a sign, but it's really remarkable how it happened on that date. The journey has been always full of ups and downs, full of challenges, of struggles, of uncertainties, but it was also very rewarding. And I think what really, for me personally, what really keeps me going is the impact we've been able to make on a nation, really, when we really reached what we reached. The impact we've been able to also have on an industry that was struggling at the time. The music industry was really struggling, and now it's back to growth, of course, with other streaming services and the way things have developed. The people that are behind Anghami mean a lot to me. I feel very proud and happy when I see them developing their personal lives, their careers. Even moving to other companies and really, based on what they experienced at Anghami. And of course, the people around us, the community support us, as you mentioned, Endeavor, also the partners, one of them, MVP, of course. All of these really contributed to where Anghami is today. And I'm always grateful and thankful to this country that I love a lot. And lately, I'm becoming too emotional when I speak about Lebanon because we left this country, unfortunately. We had to. And we feel jealous when we see how other governments are treating their countries. One of the things I also love about Anghami is that it's a story that's not affiliated to any politics, to any corruption, to any religions, or nothing. It's just pure two crazy guys who are very passionate. Even somehow, as I mentioned, maybe a year went into something and they made it happen just for the love of making something the right way. And I'm proud that we're always known as the Lebanese startup, and will always be.
Just before we open it up maybe for Q&A, just one comment. So today you have about 70 million users, 15 million songs.
Oh, much more. We have around 100 million songs. We have around 20 million actives and around 1.5 million basic subscribers.
That's on the positive side. And definitely all your story is something we're all proud of. But in everyone's journey, there are ups and downs. And one of the things that happened after you were listed at the Nasdaq is obviously the stock price. Now the stock price reached numbers that you were probably not expecting at the beginning. And then it started declining, going down to about over $1 now. How do you feel about that? How do you see the future?
Yeah, so as you all know, we went public to a SPAC, and it was the biggest trend at the time. And even though the SPACs weren't all successful, our listing was very successful. We had amazing traction when we went public. But the macros, as you mentioned, the macroeconomics changed completely. And with this hit that all tech companies specifically took, our stock price struggled But I believe that this is also a cycle. Things will eventually calibrate. But on the upside, I believe that this somehow taught us to be more disciplined, to focus on basics and essentials of the business, but on efficiency and on profitability. And this also pushed us to really improve in so many areas, to think differently, and to focus on performance on the business itself. And we just announced, in our 2022 results with 37% increase in revenues, and our H1 results with 60% improvement in our EBITDA. So we're on the way of, having a better business and with focus on things that matter the most, which is efficiency.
Thank you very much. Maybe we're going to open it up for questions. Maybe we can move the microphones. That would be great.
Thank you, Eddy. Thank you, Eddy. Very impressive story. It was a startup, it was an idea, and now you have several companies, same industry, but different disciplines and all, and which you are managing. This requires from you different skills. Before you were managing the company, and this is now you're managing the people. And can you tell us more about that and how you're able to evolve yourself as well?
First of all, it's always about the people, and managing people is always a big part of the big deal, and a big part of the business. Because it's no longer about the founders, it's about the people that are around the business. Now, how I manage things, definitely after being public, you have a bigger deal of governance and compliance that you need to allocate more time for. This wasn't the case previously, but I believe this is accounted for as part of the deal. What's really keeping us busy now is how to make sure that we're not just looking after growth, which used to be the case previously. How we can really improve every metric in the business. How we can, as I mentioned, be more efficient and gear towards profitability, because this is the name of the game now. It's no longer about those big numbers. It's no longer about how much growth you're making. It's about how much or when can you be profitable and what will be your profits, and how also can you innovate, because you can't stop innovating in this type of business. And I'm really also very proud of our tech team led by our partner Eddy Habib. We've been really, at the forefront of technology with very minimal resources, without really, an army of engineers. And for example, one of the things we were pioneering with as the first, platform to launch is AI newsroom. We were the first to have a full AI news, daily news brought to you based on the interests you have in your country and in 3 languages, fully AI automated and fully legal. So these kind of innovations that we always try to focus on, so that we don't stall from that front. And innovations from a business point of view, because after all, even if you are focused on the essentials, you need to always keep growing. That's why we came up with those extensions I mentioned and decided to take Anghami from just a really streaming platform to an entertainment platform. And there's a lot that can be done around entertainment, because entertainment opens a wider, angle. You have much bigger, opportunities. It's a much bigger audience, and you're tapping on, bigger potential. So inshallah, we're going to have also more stuff around it.
Thank you.
Did that answer your question?
Yes, I'll come back also. Thank you, Eddy. Fascinating story indeed. You told us what you did right. What are the things that you regret? What are the things that you would have done differently?
I don't regret much in life. I only regret that I didn't really perfect piano, because I still envy every pianist who plays better than me. I'm very bad at playing piano. I regret every time I wasn't bold enough, when I didn't really take the risk, even it was it was very risky. Because every time you take a risk, you figure out a way, to hedge this risk. But the benefits you will reap eventually. So I like to take risks, and every time I got scared of something, I regret it now.
All right. So back to the financials. You mentioned you have like huge user base, like 20 million, and a fairly lean employee number, like 150. What is it what's the financial challenge that makes you like kind of bit of a like what's the road to profitability given that you have advantages cost base? Is it indicative of challenges of startups in the region? Does it draw parallels with others that are struggling in Lebanon or in the region?
First of all, I believe that it's not about the number of the people. We were more than 150, to be honest. We reduced our workforce by around 22%. And this is something that every company is doing. So, and I can tell you that we became more efficient, our performance improved. So it's not always about the number of people. It's about how you manage people and how dedicated those people are and how efficient they are. Now, speaking of the challenges today, clearly fundraising, cash in general, used to be much more accessible before, the downturn. Today, every dollar matters. So we really need to make sure that you're really maximizing your output and focused on making enough revenue so that you don't need to fundraise, because if you want to fundraise now, it's going to be quite expensive. And I think that's been a challenge since day one. You always need to fundraise, and fundraising is always a difficult task, but now it's becoming more and more important given the macros, as I mentioned. Money isn't flowing as it used to be, especially in the tech space. صح وليد وين فعلا؟
Maybe you have a question online?
Yes. We have a question online, but let's see if Anghami can speak.
Yes, hi.
Go ahead, Anghami.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah. So my question is, back to growth. So you mentioned that you're looking into ways to expand into entertainment and AI. Is there room for growth into like new markets that are not in like the MENA region, and how can you compete with a giant like Spotify?
We are focused on the MENA region because we believe that we have an edge here. We don't intend to go compete with Apple Music or Spotify in the US or with Deezer in France. But in the MENA region, we believe that we have an edge. We know this market very well. We have a lot of advantages that competition doesn't have. And by the way, we used to be always referred to as the largest music streaming platform because we were only, there was only Anghami. Now everyone else is here, and we're still holding our position. So we're focused on the region and trying to grow into new verticals rather than going into new territories, because we believe that we have a very strong edge based on our market know-how, on the depth that is really in this market. Remember that we're really in a very hot region in this world. Take Saudi Arabia itself, what's happening there, the complete evolution that's happening around music and entertainment was banned. Now it's an area of focus and it's being subsidized by the government. So a lot of opportunities are there taking only Saudi. So there's a lot of potential here in the market, and we're growing into verticals that can support the business and can grow, drive growth and create more synergies. So that's why we're more focused on this region rather than wasting our resources.
Eddy, you have an amazing success story. But what's most amazing is the fact that you have a partner, a founder with whom you founded this company. And we know how difficult it is normally for founders to get along over all this period of time, how to stay ahead of the game, both of you very passionate, driving the company forward. There's a lot of literature about the problems that could arise and so on. I would like to know what's your experience in terms of governance inside the company between you and Eddy, and how you manage to keep the company, to take this company, let's say, to this height.
Yeah, thank you for asking this interesting question. First of all, Eddy is, we've known each other since probably 1999. And Eddy is older than me, has much more experience than me. He's like my mentor even. So, having Eddy on board was my first validation that we're onto something big, to be honest. So I'm grateful to have such partner, friend, co-founder. Now, how we manage things, we know each other like for years, and we're very complementary. I don't know the things that he masters, and he can do what I do, right? So we're very complementary, and this complementarity makes us very efficient. In the meantime, we trust each other in his space, and help us really each focus on what he's doing. We just align and make sure that we're within sync. Now, from a governance point of view, Eddy is the chairman of the board. I'm CEO, but we operate in a very efficient way and align on the strategic things. But from an operation point of view, each of us is looking after a part of the business. He's after product and tech. I do business and partnerships and labels and all of this difficult part.
If you don't have any difficult situations where you have to try to resolve some issues?
Not really. We're always aligned. Sometimes I have a different point of view, he has another. But we always stress test. I think we use these, different, point of views to help us stress testing things, validating that this is the right thing. If I challenge him, it's just make sure that we're doing the right things and vice versa. And usually I leave sharing actually. And I like this because this is the way for me to make sure that we're doing the right thing.
Can you share with us your thoughts as to how the music industry has changed over time in terms of how much, let's say, global music sales are streaming versus physical sales, and how has, let's say, today artists, in terms of royalties in the past compared to performances?
Yeah,
because there seems to be a lot of change over the last decade.
absolutely. So the music industry was in full decline, right? Because of piracy, and no one was buying CDs anymore. No one, we all know, right? So it was initially. Then when streaming started to emerge, music labels did not really believe in this model because it was cannibalizing their revenues coming out of downloads on iTunes. That was the main revenue stream at the time. But when, and by the way, when we started Anghami, streaming was experimental. It wasn't validated yet. So the music industry wasn't sure whether this revenue stream can be enough to, compensate for the drop of iTunes sales and, CDs and vinyls, etc. So it was quite experimental. And then it proved to be scalable and it grew. And I can tell you that the Middle East, by the way, in 2021, for example, was the fastest growing region in the world with 35.5% music industry. So, from being completely not on the map to the fastest growing region in the world in the industry. And I'm proud that we really contributed to this. Now, if you have content, if you own a label, if you invest in content, it's the best time. And I see now a lot of funds now, raising to invest in content, buying catalog, acquire IP, even producing content. We're one of those. We created the Buy Music label with Sony Music to create content, because now with all those alternatives and with the growth and with streaming becoming really mainstream and having all these platforms monetizing the content, no more piracy, because we somehow managed to, as we always say, pirate the pirates by providing better alternatives. So there's great value owning content, having content, and the music industry is back to growth. And we can see the likes of Universal and Orange Public are doing very well, and distributing dividends and growing significantly. And now they are looking at the region to make investments. For example, Warner opened here in Beirut their offices. We somehow been a driver for them to open here. They're all investing in more content. You see, for example, as I mentioned, Sony partnered up with us to create content and have more, an investment in Arabic music, because this is the area of course, and it's making good money.
Hi.
Hi.
So when you got listed in NASDAQ, we started seeing the media writing about Anghami as an Arab company. And some of them even said an Abu Dhabi based company. We rarely see Lebanon or Lebanese founder or Lebanese co-founders, which for us is, you are dear to our hearts as ecosystem players, as a successful startup. Is this a strategic approach to positioning yourself as an Arab company, or was it kind of imposed by the investors? How do you look about this, and where do you put Lebanon? Because many articles don't even say that the founders are Lebanese. It's just Arab.
I'll give you two questions, one scientific and another emotional, right? On the emotional part, we're always we're proudly Lebanese. I say, حتى when we were on NASDAQ, we had a flag whereby we had the Lebanese flag and the Emirati flag. Why UAE? Simply because Abu Dhabi helped us, move out our team from Beirut who wanted to leave. So they offered us subsidy as part of the Abu Dhabi Investment Authority (ADU) to have, a space there, and they subsidized part of the cost to move out people because the situation was terrible, right? So and we moved our headquarters there from a scientific point of view, because you cannot be, going public and listing on NASDAQ, and you have no headquarters in Beirut, the country that is going through that many issues and that level of uncertainty. Still, UAE is a new market as well. It's a bigger platform, it's a bigger economy, it's much more stable, you have much more access to funding and all of that. So this is the reason why. It's and we never, as mentioned, we never say that we're not a Lebanese startup. But yes, we are headquartered in Abu Dhabi. And this is what you read and what you see. A lot what the press covers. I think there's a lot of things that they miss on, probably one of these, but we're never shy or not proud of being Lebanese.
Hi. So you previously mentioned advantages over Apple Music and Spotify. And I wanted to ask, what are some of those advantages that you had in the MENA region? And what are some of the strategies that you guys employed in order to distinguish yourselves from those in the MENA region?
So first of all, as a product, right, Anghami has much more features. They have a complete social layer that you don't find on these platforms, because the Arab culture is more social. We like to interact, we like to chat, we like to meet musically like-minded people. That's from a technical point of view. From a content point of view, we have all the content you find on the Spotify and Apples of this world. On top of that, we have a lot of Arabic and exclusive Arabic content, starting with Amr Diab, the Arab world's biggest artist, who's exclusive on Anghami. So add to that other content that we produce or we license, or part of our partnerships with maybe NBC or other labels. We have a big, large label in Iraq who's exclusive on Anghami as well. And we do a lot of pre-release. So from a content point of view, we are much more competitive. And from a curation point of view, our experience is more curated and tailored for our taste, because we are from the region, we understand it very well, and we have curators and boots on the ground in every city. We're not like others, a bunch of guys in an office in Dubai, and that's it. So that's why we're maintaining our edge. Plus, we also work on localizing, building partnerships, for example, partnership with telcos in every market. We engage more with the local communities, arts community, so that we have, a better market fit. And this is why we are where we are.
Yeah, good question. How does the market react to the piece around governance, specifically that your CTO, co-founder, is also chairman? That's the first. Go ahead.
What's the issue if he is the chairman and CEO?
Because usually the market likes to have, segregation between, the executive part of the business and the board of directors. In that there is clear, oversight on the executive part of the business. Usually that's the
maybe you're right,
that's the trend. Yeah.
but this is not really, a main concern for us. It's not creating a problem. Typically, you're right. Probably it's better to have a chairman, CTO, but in our case, it's not an issue.
And the other question is around, also how does the market react on the focus? So you mentioned that you're doing a lot of ventures in creating this entertainment platform. So also, we see in stocks that companies who are, very diversified and not really focused, so the market maybe taxes the stocks, so maybe, I don't know.
You're very right. We've always, been concerned about doing many things, so we lose focus. But in the meantime, we noticed and we saw that when you do more things, you create synergies and you can have a bigger impact in the industry. And for example, for an artist or for an up-and-coming artist, I'll give you an example. He can generate, let's say, X money on Spotify or on Apple or on YouTube, and that's it. But with Anghami, he can not only generate this money, he can have a bigger reach because we have a larger base. He can work with us on a project with Pepsi or with PUBG or whatever on Anghami Studios. He can be performing at Anghami Lab, for example. We can be part of our, now for the next week we have Beat the Heat. It's a festival in Dubai. So he can be part of the lineup. He can even be signed to our label. So you have much more instruments, you have much more, opportunities to have a bigger impact. That's what I mean by a bigger impact. The bigger impact is that, in other words, you have the biggest check for those people to give you the highest preference and to be, a priority for them. And you know that these artists are very important because each of these will drive its audience towards you and give you, this growth you want. So no, it wasn't bad. It is good as of now, and the synergies are proving to be efficient because at the end, all are serving the core, which is growing the synergies. But it's very valid. Always thought of this one.
Hello, Eddy. I would like to ask you about the business model of Anghami in terms of revenues and costs. So the revenues are mainly based on subscriptions, or you have other revenues? And the cost, whenever an artist is on the platform, they pay for you or you pay for them? And if we run a little bit the numbers, I want to see just your numbers now. I see a turnover of 14 million. So if you divide it by average $5 ticket per subscription, as if 5% of the subscribers are paying a subscription now. So how will you do to increase this percentage in order at least to break even in some profit?
Oh, these are a lot of questions.
Imagine how much a banker, right?
So speaking of revenues, we did 48.5 million last year, not 14. So now subscription is our biggest revenue driver, but we also generate revenue from advertising and what I call now the new business extension. Also, they contribute to our revenue, but the biggest part is subscription. Now, whether we pay for artists or artists pay us. No, typically we pay for artists, pay for labels or distributors or artists directly. Depends. The royalties based on their traction and their consumption on the platform. There's the formula whereby the revenues collected will be divided part to the content holders. We distribute pro rata based on their percentage, and we keep part. And this is, by the way, our biggest cost center, the content cost. And there's another part whereby artists spend with us to promote themselves. That's a smaller part, but this exists as well. But typically it's us paying those labels and artists, etc. And so you mentioned that, if you divide our revenues versus number of subscribers, so not all our subscribers pay $5, right? That's not our pool. We have bundles, we have markets where the subscription is cheaper. For example, Lebanon used to be 5, then went down, then now it's 2.5, and we'll eventually make it back to 5 because the labels wanted to be 5. They're trying to normalize the market, but it's not always $5 per subscriber. We, in many cases, we earn less. And if it's a part of a bundle or a hard bundle, we call it, whereby you buy SIM or you get it part of the package or something. These are big volumes at a discount. So there are different ways on how to calculate the per subscriber revenue. It's difficult to have a harmful audience. A hard time.
A quick question, Eddy. Going back to the IPO thing, you say you don't regret anything, but was the move and the timing in hindsight correct? And what is the market expecting of you today that you are not delivering, that is punishing the stock price?
Yeah, as I mentioned, I don't regret anything. And it's a cycle. We believe that things will recalibrate, and already things are better. Apparently, the Fed is no longer increasing the interest rates, and the macros hopefully will be better. But honestly, this is not something that we're looking at a lot. Yes, we don't like it, but as I mentioned, the focus is on the business itself, and we believe that if we are really performing and we're doing better margins, we're having a profitability, things will be, reflected in our stock price. Clearly today, the market is overreacting big time. If you look at our revenues versus our stock price, it's not fair, but it is what it is. But as I mentioned, things will recalibrate eventually.
Rodrigue, you still have a question now? Or?
I have. Eddy, when I look at your story and how you've grown today in the entertainment business, no longer only streaming, what's more? What's your dream today? Have you reached your goal, your dream, your aspiration, or you still have more? What do you dream about at night, and where do you want to go from?
I believe that Anghami, as I mentioned, can and is evolving to be more of a media entertainment platform. And when you speak entertainment, it can go from streaming music to streaming anything, or to offline and online. And by the way, we've validated that there's some sort of convergence between the online world and the offline world. And you can really have, a place among all of this under the name of entertainment. And we totally believe that we're in a region that is full of potential, full of opportunities. And alhamdulillah, we built a solid brand that can allow us to grow more around entertainment.
Eddy, I noticed that you described Anghami as the first Arab tech company to be listed on the Nasdaq. Why did you say tech? I mean, is tech more important than being, a music platform? And is tech the differentiating factor, as far as competition?
Yeah, we are a tech company because of the core tech is the core. Okay, we are a media, we're music, but we're a tech company at the core. And technically, we're not the first. If you remove tech, we're not the first. There's Aramex listed for us. So another reason why tech was important to be had.
Yeah, but my question again is, what is the differentiating factor? I mean, what are the barriers to entry, or how do you stay ahead of competition? I mean, now there could be, a big capital that could go and be after this big base,
We have competition. Yeah, I mean, we do have competition. We have all those streaming services in the market. You have Spotify, YouTube, Apple Music. Deezer came with big, budgets, and they're out completely. So, why are we still here? Simply, as I mentioned, we have a better product fit. We're focused on a small part of the world, but we're doing it perfectly. We have very strong differentiators from an experience point of view, from a content point of view. From partnerships point of view, we have more than 48 telco partnerships that allow people to subscribe via the telcos. We do work with almost every brand, trying to, get advertising revenue and producing content for brands. So we're maximizing our, free base, making sure that it's monetized. And we're doing around the business, what we call the extensions, so that we have, things that can differentiate us, so that we're not another, YouTube or Spotify or Apple Music. We have something more, we have something different. And the synergies that created can support the core and the business and create more differentiation and a higher barrier to entry to have someone who can pay money and move us out of the market. And it's been validated. Honestly, we used to have this question a lot before having competition. Now it's validated. I've been here since 2018, and we're still holding the lion's share.
Eddy, can you please tell us about your experience as a CEO with the role, the board role, and the regulators and everything after you list?
Yeah, it becomes much more. There's a lot of governance. That's not something that is out of this world. You need to pay attention a little bit on the things that are related to compliance. You have deliverables from a NASDAQ point of view and from an SEC point of view, from an audit, reporting, disclosures, all of that. And but again, you build a team around you that can help you with all of this, and you bring in the needed skills and expertise. One of the things that is good in a SPAC is that when you SPAC, you have the SPAC people can bring in this, kind of Wall Street expertise, at least at the beginning, so that up and running. We also had a lot of support from MVP. Rabia Khouri helped us a lot because he had 10 years experience in Wall Street. And you bring in the right, the needed, service providers, from lawyers to auditors. So of course, technically, there are things that are different. For example, audit is a PCAOB audit, which is much more complex, much more expensive as well. But this is part of, the tools you need to be public. Plus, it's business as usual.
We'll take our last two questions before we wrap it up.
Eddy, thank you for sharing your story, which is very interesting. And you mentioned that when you went public, the price of your shares stopped a little bit. As you mentioned a while ago, it's unfair what the price is. So my question is, do you regret going public, although you mentioned that it helped you in focusing more on governance, focusing more on productivity and efficiency? And because we saw the valuation of the company went down a lot, so and do you have any plans to delist? Is that an option that will be considered in the future?
No, we're not contemplating any of these options. But again, no one really believes that the valuation you see now in the market is the actual valuation of the company. And this is proven by no one is willing to sell at this price. So the price is somehow exaggerated. And any conversation we have with any investor is not definitely on the basis of this price you see. Now, whether we regret it or we don't, as I mentioned, we were unlucky with our timing, I have to say. But we don't regret it. It raised the profile of the company. It helped us really learn more on different ways. Eventually, it will give you a lot of access. You can acquire and grow based on your stock when the price is right. You can use it as your currency. A lot of advantages. And but again, what I'm trying to say is that we focus on things that matter, right? More than market valuations and stock price and all of that, which is efficiency, profitability margins, and all of that. And everything will, recalibrate in my
Okay. Thank you, Eddy. I'm really proud of you and happy to share this story. In fact, following the previous question about going public or staying, let's say, taking the decision of the delisting at a certain point. You know, in any startup, there are several stages. You know, that are the early stage, then mid stage, pre-IPO, then IPO. You decided to go public because there is a purpose out of it. For sure, your initial purpose is out of your big passion to serve an international community. And it's clear, and you just said it's not about only making profit or about market valuation. It's about serving the community. And, you know, it's all about passion, and success is all about passion. And things will come later. In fact, my question is, what about, do you consider a merger with another company at a certain point? And because it's clear, you want to keep Anghami and you want to keep the name and you want to grow it and to serve through it. But what about accepting a merger at a certain point or outsourcing some of the services which are today under the umbrella of Anghami? Which service you may outsource, or if there is any synergy out of any merger, which company or what type of company you may consider? Thank you.
Thank you. So, I mean, one of the reasons and the motives of being public is remaining independent and, you know, having access to what's needed to keep growing the company. And when we went public, we had a significant influx of funds through the private investors who joined the IPO. So, yes, that's among our, you know, targets of remaining independent, growing the vision we have. And honestly, we want to have a platform for Arabs that can be world class. Don't have one. And we're proud that it's a Lebanese story again. I mean, unlike what many think. On contemplating any of the other options, merging or maybe consolidating, you know, we're a business after all, right? I mean, such kind of conversations we have to entertain. We have investors. We have to, you know, make sure we're preserving their best interest. If there's a deal that can really bring some positive outcome and that can remain within the best interest of the companies and investors and the people behind Anghami, we're open. But I can tell you that the things that we always think of is remaining somehow more and more independent and driving the vision we have.
After the last question, we'll have that last question.
Hi, Eddy. Just a question. At the beginning of Anghami, how did you convince Rotana to give you an exclusive partnership, knowing that any company hates an exclusive partnership because maybe they will lose a better business opportunity?
Yeah, I think at the time it was two things. First, we came at the time where they weren't making any money out of streaming. So we didn't cannibalize any revenue. And probably they didn't take us seriously, to be honest. So they thought that they'll let us have this money and they'll go bankrupt like many others. And we proved them wrong. And I think they regretted it later on. So that was one. Two, exclusive can be, as you mentioned, like it can limit someone, but also it can have rewards as well as financial reward. And there's extra support from this partner who is exclusive on the platform. So it has pros and cons. And in the case of Rotana, I don't know why they accepted, but they did, and we renewed actually another third year.
Eddy, thank you very much for having answered all our questions very commonly. Some of us tried to do our plans, but so I'm going to make it the last attempt. AI. you, maybe it's a support and technology. For many of us, it's scary. Where is it going? How do you see the future?
Yeah, this is a personal opinion around AI. Definitely, it's a game changer, technology. I don't think none of those, like NFT and metaverse, all of this would have the impact of AI. AI is a game changer, definitely. I'm not an expert in tech, but I can tell you that's gonna be big. It's gonna transform the industry, and it is starting already. From our point of view, as I mentioned, we're using AI more in so many ways, like in recommendations or in customer support. But today we are being able to generate content using AI. At the music industry level, they're freaking out, right, of AI, because anyone can really now mimic Drake or sing Just Me or Warwick Fury and create a song who sounds literally like him. But the thing is that, I mean, and the labels are very direct, and they're sending notices and letters warning us, even they're putting a clause in the contract, no AI, as simple as that, because you're like taking their artists, extensive artists, to create content that can dilute their revenues and their content. But my personal point of view about music/AI is that the minute you have a song that is completely done on AI and becomes a hit, that's when AI in music can become like dangerous. And I think it's going to happen because if you look back how music evolved, right? It used to be music that we play on instruments. Then you can do music on your computer, like electronic music and tech music that emerged still until now. And you see hits about this without really killing the old one. So I believe that the minute you see an AI, purely AI generated song reaching the charts, then it's something.
But before we get there, I suggest we move for real drinks and try to continue this discussion next time. That's something I really. Thank you. Have a long drinks here first. Obviously, thank you very much for those of you who attended online. See you next time.